The glass door of the diner swung open with a sharp creak, and every head turned toward the sound. The morning rush froze for a moment as a tall man stepped in, his presence heavier than the air itself. His name was Luca Marino, and though most people in the city only whispered it, everyone knew it carried power that could make a man disappear before sunrise. He wasn't dressed like the monster people imagined. No black suit, no gold chain, just a dark jacket, sleeves rolled up, and eyes that saw too much. But what caught his attention wasn't the smell of coffee or the sound of laughter. It was the small figure sitting in the corner booth, shoulders shaking, one side of her lips split open, blood barely dried. Her name was Amelia, and she had been working in that diner for 2 years, never late, never loud, never asking for more than her tips. She tried to hide the bruise under her left eye by keeping her face turned toward the window, but when Luca's shadow stretched across her table, she knew it was too late. He stood there for a long moment, silent, his jaw tightening as he took in the sight. Then his voice cut through the air, low and steady, the kind of calm that made everyone else in the diner hold their breath. "Who hit you?" The whole room went still. Amelia's hand froze on her coffee cup. She looked up, startled, then tried to smile. "It's nothing. I just fell." Luca's eyes darkened. "That's not a fall." He took a step closer, his voice quieter now, but the danger in it made even the cook behind the counter stop flipping pancakes. "I asked you a question, Amelia." She swallowed hard, her fingers trembling around the handle of the cup. She didn't want to tell him. She knew what he was capable of, knew that people who crossed him didn't get second chances. But hiding it wouldn't protect anyone, not this time. Her lips parted, and her voice came out small. "It was Tom, my landlord." She looked down again, ashamed. "He said I was late on rent, even though I wasn't. He came by last night, and..." She stopped there. Lucas said nothing. He just nodded slowly, once, as if memorizing the name. The cook behind the counter tried to change the subject, but no one spoke. The room felt like it was holding its breath with her. After a few seconds, Lucas' tone softened, though his eyes stayed cold. "You should have called me," he said. "You know you don't have to take that." Amelia shook her head quickly. "No, please. Don't do anything. I'm fine, really." He leaned down slightly, so that only she could hear him. "You think I can see someone I care about sitting here looking like this and do nothing?" His words weren't loud, but they carried a weight that made her eyes fill with tears. She whispered, "He doesn't know who you are. He just thinks I'm nobody." Luca's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then we'll make sure he never forgets who you are." He straightened up, tossed a few bills onto the table, and turned toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back once, his gaze softening just enough to make her heart twist. "Go home early today. Don't answer any knocks." That night, the city seemed quieter than usual. A cold drizzle fell over the narrow streets, and the streetlights flickered like tired eyes. In a small apartment 3 blocks away, Tom, the landlord, sat in front of his television, drinking cheap whiskey and muttering to himself. He didn't notice the black cars that stopped outside his building or the heavy boots that echoed in the hallway until the first door slammed open. The men didn't shout. They didn't need to. Every noise in that building stopped the moment Luca's men entered. Luca didn't go inside right away. He waited by the car, lighting a cigarette, the flame reflecting in his eyes. He didn't need to watch what was happening. He knew exactly how it would go. His orders were simple. No blood, no broken bones, just fear, deep enough to make a man regret ever lifting his hand to someone who didn't deserve it. When his right-hand man, Rocco, returned, he only said 3 words. "It's done, boss." Luca flicked his cigarette into the puddle and nodded. "Good. Now we pay rent on her behalf. 6 months in advance." Rocco looked at him, surprised. "You sure?" Luca's tone left no room for argument. "She's family now." The next morning, Amelia woke to a knock on her door. Her heart jumped, remembering his warning, but before she could answer, an envelope slid under the crack. Inside was a single folded note with her landlord's handwriting, apologetic, almost shaky. "You don't owe rent anymore. Sorry for everything." Along with it was a stack of receipts showing her balance marked as paid in full. She didn't understand at first, but deep down, she knew. She pressed her fingers against the note, her eyes stinging. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, whispers began to spread. By noon, everyone had heard the story in some version or another. How every man who had laid a hand on a woman that week found his door kicked open at dawn, how the police were silent, and how people were saying the boss had woken up angry. No one dared say his name too loud. By sunset, the rumor had turned into legend. Luca Marino was cleaning his city one door at a time. Back in the diner, Amelia was pouring coffee when Luca walked in again. The bruise had faded, replaced by something lighter in her eyes. She tried to thank him, but he stopped her with a small shake of his head. "You don't owe me thanks," he said quietly. "Just promise me one thing." She looked up, curious. "What's that?" His voice softened, carrying a kind of warmth that felt rare for him. "Promise me you'll never think you're nobody again." She smiled, small and real this time. "I promise." He nodded once and walked out, leaving her standing there with a strange peace in her chest. Outside, as he stepped into his car, Rocco handed him a small folded paper, another report of someone else causing trouble across town. Luca read it, sighed, and said the same thing he always did. "Let's go talk to him." The morning after the rumors spread, the entire city felt different. The men who ruled through fear kept their heads down, the noise of arrogance replaced by silence. Every mechanic, loan shark, and dealer who had once bragged about knowing Luca Marino suddenly acted like they had never heard his name. In the quiet diner on 9th Street, Amelia wiped the counter as the first customers trickled in. Her hands were steadier now, her smile easier, but her eyes still drifted toward the door every few minutes, waiting for the familiar sound of boots on tile. When Luca finally walked in, the bell above the door barely made a sound, but everyone felt it. He gave her a small nod before sitting at his usual booth. She poured him coffee without asking. "You haven't been in all week," she said lightly. He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "Busy." She raised an eyebrow. "Busy fixing the city?" His eyes flicked toward hers, and for the first time she saw something soft beneath the steel. Something like that. Before either could say more, the door opened again and a young boy in a torn jacket stumbled inside. He looked no older than 12, his face bruised, his hands shaking. Amelia rushed toward him. "Hey, are you all right?" The boy nodded quickly, though his eyes darted to the window as if afraid someone was following him. Luca's hand stilled on his coffee cup. The boy recognized him instantly, the kind of recognition that carried both fear and hope. "Please," he whispered. "They said if I told anyone, they'd hurt my sister." Luca leaned back slowly, his tone quiet but sharp. "Who?" The boy hesitated, trembling. Amelia placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, urging him to breathe. The words came out between sobs. "Men from the old factory on Miller Street. They take kids to work at night. Said we owe them money because of my dad." He started crying harder, his voice cracking. "They said if I run, they'll take her instead." Luca's jaw tightened, and Amelia could see the change in his eyes, the calm before the storm. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and handed Rocco, who had been waiting near the door, a small folded note. "Get every man we trust. Miller Street." Rocco nodded and was gone before the boy could blink. Amelia's voice trembled. "You're not going there alone, are you?" Luca turned to her, his tone steady. "I don't go alone. I go prepared." An hour later, Miller Street was no longer silent. The abandoned factory, once used for storing construction materials, had become a den of extortion and child labor, run by men who believed no one would ever stop them. They didn't expect Luca Marino. By the time his black cars rolled in, the guards outside barely had time to shout. Doors splintered, lights flickered, and the men inside found themselves surrounded. Luca walked through the chaos with the calmness of someone who had already decided how this would end. When he reached the main office, the man in charge, a greasy, thick-set figure named Raul, was waiting with false confidence. "Marino," he said, forcing a grin. "Didn't expect you to care about street kids." Luca's expression didn't change. "You touched what's mine." Raul laughed. "Yours? They're rats, not your people." Luca took a slow step forward. "Everyone in my city is my people. You just forgot the rules." Raul tried to grab the gun on his desk, but before he could even lift it, Rocco's hand slammed it away. Luca didn't raise his voice. "Pack your things and disappear. You have till sundown. If I see you after that, you won't see another sunrise." Raul wanted to argue, but one look at Luca's eyes silenced him. He nodded, swallowing his pride. The rest of his men were already being escorted out by Luca's crew. The kids they had trapped were led outside to safety, blinking into the daylight they hadn't seen in weeks. When Luca returned to the diner that evening, his shirt sleeves were rolled, his knuckles bruised, but his face calm. Amelia was closing up when he entered. She looked at him, reading the story in his eyes without needing details. "Was it bad?" she asked softly. "It's over," he replied. She walked around the counter, stopping a few feet from him. "That boy came back this afternoon. He wanted me to tell you thank you. He said his sister's safe now." For a moment, neither spoke. Then she stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. "You keep saving everyone else, Luca. Who saves you?" He looked away, almost as if the question hurt more than any bullet. "No one needs to save me," he said finally. "I made my peace with who I am a long time ago." She shook her head. "That's not peace, that's punishment." He almost smiled, but didn't. Maybe they're the same thing. Outside, thunder rolled, and a sudden downpour hit the city. Luca turned to leave, but before stepping into the rain, he said, "Lock up early tonight. Tomorrow's going to be loud." Amelia frowned. "Why?" He looked over his shoulder, eyes dark but steady. "Because when people find out what really happens on Miller Street, every door in this city will break open." Rain poured through the night like the sky was trying to wash the city clean. Luca sat in the back of his car, watching droplets race across the window as Rocco drove through empty streets. Neither spoke for miles. The silence between them was the kind that came from shared understanding. When they finally reached the old warehouse by the docks, Rocco cut the engine. "You sure you want to do this tonight?" he asked quietly. Luca didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the boy, the bruise on Amelia's face, and the faces of all the people who were afraid to speak. Then he opened the door and stepped into the rain. "If not tonight," he said, "then when?" Inside the warehouse, a few men waited, loyal ones who didn't ask questions. On the table in front of them lay files, photographs, and a list of names. Luca looked over it, his jaw tight. "Every name here belongs to someone who forgot who runs this city," he said. "Every name belongs to someone who took from the weak. Tomorrow, we take it back." One of the men, older and cautious, cleared his throat. "Boss, this is going to start something. You do this, you'll shake every corner of the city. They'll come after you." Luca's eyes didn't waver. "Then let them come." Maybe it's time they remembered what fear feels like. By dawn, the storm had slowed, but the city was far from calm. The news spread faster than the sunrise. Warehouse doors smashed open, gambling dens emptied, and gangs that had ruled the blocks for years vanished overnight. Luca's men worked quietly, no blood, no chaos, just order. Every man who had hurt someone under Luca's watch was dragged from his bed and made to return what he'd stolen. By noon, people whispered that Marino's men had moved through every neighborhood, knocking down doors not to destroy, but to restore balance. Amelia heard the rumors from customers at the diner. A woman who worked across town said her abusive landlord had suddenly returned all her deposits. A taxi driver claimed the men who used to demand protection money hadn't shown up all day. The city was tense, confused, but underneath the fear was something new, relief. When Luca walked in later that afternoon, drenched from the rain, the whole diner went silent again. Amelia met his eyes as she handed him a towel. "It's you, isn't it?" she said softly. He didn't deny it. "They broke too many rules," he said. "Someone had to remind them there are still lines you don't cross." She stared at him, torn between gratitude and worry. "You're making enemies you can't count." He took the coffee she poured and smiled faintly. "Enemies don't scare me. Silence does." She sighed. "You can't protect everyone." He leaned closer, his voice calm but steady. "Maybe not, but I can make sure no one else has to live afraid." That night, Luca returned home to find a letter slipped under his door. It was from someone he hadn't heard from in years, his brother, Angelo. The letter was short, written in neat handwriting. "You're waking ghosts, Luca. The old families are watching. They don't like what you're doing. They're calling a meeting. You should walk away before they make you disappear." He read the note twice, then folded it carefully. Rocco walked in just as he set it on the table. "Bad news." Luca shook his head slowly. "Just a reminder that peace never comes free." He stood, staring out at the skyline. "If the old families want to talk, we'll give them something to talk about." The next day, Luca met with the city's oldest crime bosses in an abandoned theater downtown. The room smelled of dust and arrogance. Men who had once feared him now sat pretending they were equals. The eldest, Don Vittorio, leaned forward with a smirk. "You've been busy, Marino. Breaking doors, freeing people. Makes you look like a hero. But heroes die fast in our world. Luca didn't sit. I didn't come here to argue, he said. I came to tell you this city doesn't belong to men who feed on fear anymore. Vittorio chuckled. And who does it belong to then? You. Luca stepped closer, his voice low enough that everyone had to lean in. It belongs to people who can sleep at night without blood on their hands. I'm done pretending that power means hurting people. You touch another innocent soul, and I'll burn every empire in this room to the ground. For a moment, the theater was silent except for the sound of rain dripping through the broken roof. Then Vittorio's smirk faded. He saw something in Luca's eyes that he hadn't seen before. Not rage, but conviction. The kind that couldn't be bargained with. You've changed, Marino, he muttered. Luca nodded once. No, I finally remembered who I am. When he walked out, Rocco was waiting by the car. How did it go, he asked. Luca gave a small smile. They'll think before they act. That's all I need. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. The city had started to change, but change never came without a price. That evening, Amelia closed up the diner and found a note tucked under the sugar jar. It was written in Luca's neat handwriting. Lock the doors tonight. Don't worry about the noise. It's just the city learning to breathe again. She smiled faintly, tucking the note into her pocket as thunder rolled in the distance. Across the city, doors were breaking again, but this time, not out of violence. Behind each one was a family reunited, debts forgiven, a quiet message delivered that the city no longer belonged to cruelty. And though no one saw him, everyone knew it was Luca. That night, the city didn't sleep. The storm had passed, but thunder still rumbled somewhere deep in the distance, echoing off rooftops like a warning that peace never stayed for long. Luca stood at the edge of the pier, his coat catching the wind, watching the reflection of the streetlights shimmer across the dark water. The air smelled of salt and gasoline, and behind him, the sound of slow footsteps broke the silence. It was Rocco. They're moving, he said quietly. Vittorio's men. They're angry, boss. They think you made them look weak. Luca didn't turn around. Good, he said. Let them feel it. Fear is how they kept the city for years. Maybe it's time they tasted it. Rocco hesitated before stepping closer. There's more. Someone's been asking about Amelia. Luca's shoulders stiffened, and the cigarette between his fingers burned a little brighter. Who? We don't know yet, but word is they want to use her to send you a message. Luca flicked the cigarette into the water, watching it vanish. Then we send one first. Across town, Amelia was at home, finishing up dishes when her phone buzzed. The message was short, just 4 words. Don't open the door. Her chest tightened. She glanced toward the hallway, every shadow suddenly feeling too alive. Then came the knock. Soft at first, then harder. She froze, holding her breath. Another message came through. I'm outside. Stay back. She peeked through the window and saw Luca standing by the curb, his car parked behind him, Rocco nearby. Relief washed over her, until she noticed the second car down the street, the one with its engine still running. Luca's eyes caught hers through the window. He mouthed one word. Down. The sound came an instant later, a shot cracking through the night, shattering her window. She hit the floor, heart pounding. Luca's men moved before she could blink, rushing the car that had fired. Tires screeched, bullets flashed, and within seconds it was over. When Luca reached her door, he didn't knock. He stepped inside, gun still in his hand, eyes scanning every corner until he was sure she was safe. She sat against the wall, shaking. He crouched in front of her, his voice softer than she'd ever heard. You okay? She nodded, barely breathing. Who were they? He hesitated. People who think hurting you will hurt me. She swallowed hard. Why would they think that? He looked at her for a long moment. Because they're right. For the first time since she'd known him, she saw something vulnerable behind his calm. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small silver locket, old and scratched. My mother gave me this, he said quietly. Said it would remind me to protect what matters. For a long time, I thought she meant power, family, reputation. But I was wrong. He placed it gently in her hand. Keep it. You matter more than they ever will. The following morning, the news reported a wave of arrests. The police had found evidence of illegal operations run by Vittorio's men, documents, cash, weapons, all left anonymously at the station door. No one knew who had sent them, but everyone suspected. The people began calling it the Marino cleanup. Reporters tried to chase the story, but no one could find Luca. He'd vanished, leaving behind only whispers and fear. At the diner, Amelia returned to work as usual, pretending the city wasn't buzzing with his name. But deep down, she missed seeing him at the booth near the window. Every time the bell over the door rang, she looked up, hoping it was him. One evening, when the rush had ended and the lights had dimmed, a small envelope appeared on the counter. Inside was a folded letter written in his sharp handwriting. By the time you read this, I'll be gone for a while. The city's changing, but some wars take time. You'll be safe. Rocco will check in on you. Don't worry about me. I'm exactly where I need to be. L. Tears blurred her vision as she traced the letter's edges. She tucked it into her apron, whispering, "You don't belong to the dark anymore." But part of her knew he wasn't done. 2 weeks later, the balance Luca had built began to crack. Vittorio had been arrested, but his son Marco wasn't. He wanted revenge. Late one night, Luca returned quietly to the city, hidden under the name of a delivery driver, slipping through alleys and old contacts. Rocco warned him to stay out of sight, but Luca wasn't listening. He needed to make sure Amelia was still safe. When he reached the diner, it was empty except for her cleaning up. The moment she saw him, she froze, the relief on her face cutting through his fatigue. "You came back," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Couldn't stay gone." But before they could say another word, glass shattered from the window. Luca pulled her down as gunfire ripped through the room. Rocco's car screeched outside, men shouting as bullets hit the walls. When the chaos stopped, silence hung heavy. Luca stood slowly, his arm bleeding, but his grip steady on the gun. Rocco rushed in. "Boss, it's Marco. He sent them." Luca looked at Amelia, then at the bullet holes in the wall. "Then tonight," he said, "we finish it." He turned to her, his voice low but firm. "You trust me?" She nodded without hesitation. He took her hand and said, "Then promise me something. No matter what happens, don't come looking for me after this." She frowned, fear in her eyes. "Why?" He gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Because I don't want you to see who I have to become to end this." Outside, engines roared to life. Inside, the diner lights flickered, reflecting off the blood on his sleeve. The city had seen storms before, but none like the one that was about to begin. If this story made you smile, share it with someone who needs a reminder that accidents can turn into beautiful beginnings.